Hey, good morning, everyone. Um, so it's just you and I this morning. Juan has uh, Juan has taken himself to Diamond Mountain this morning, and he is en route, traveling to Diamond Mountain. So it'll just be you guys and I. Um, I like my background. I haven't changed it. I think it looks really beautiful. Um, okay, so I think it's a nice tradition to continue what Juan has started. And I think what we'll do is we'll begin by setting our meditation and making sure that we bring about our highest understanding of emptiness before we head into today's discussion. So let's take a minute or two, whatever feels appropriate, and let's think about the diamond world and how we can touch it by using this class. I was checking to see if anyone else had their eyes open. Okay, so I think that's a really beautiful way to find stillness and to make sure. Uh, Plus, I also asked you to close your eyes so that you wouldn't see my hair this morning. I didn't shower before coming to the class, and I usually shower because I want to make sure that you can't smell me. Um, um, okay, give me just 1 second. I have two screens. So I'm going to pull up my other screen because I kind of have some notes that I made for this week and no slideshow this week. Um, and what I thought we would do, um, good jokes today. Yeah, I'm trying hard. Um, so I think we've been doing this for 2.5 months now. Um, and I was going to say, probably every month we need to take one class to start doing Q&As, uh, questions and answers, so that we can make sure that we're all up to speed on what we've covered and there aren't very many unanswered or open questions as we move forward. So, with that said, I'm happy to take. I'm happy to take questions in either the chat or if you want to unmute your microphone, feel free. And maybe what we could do to start, if let me just get my Zoom set up here too. I can't see the chat right now. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Hi, good morning, Daniel. I see you're good evening from Romania. I've got a couple of um, wonderful Romanian friends that I've made that live here in my town. They come over in the summers to work at some of the stores, and then they fly back to Romania. I think in about 1 month. They're wonderful people, and they've become good friends. Uh, okay, now let me bring up my notes, and that'll give us something to kind of start the morning. And sorry, I didn't do all this before I logged in. I took my dog for a walk because it was a very beautiful morning with pink clouds and wonderful, wonderful sky. So give me just 1 second. Thank you for bearing with me. Uh, okay, so everybody was familiar with, everybody should be familiar with the, let me start over. I think if you've done the first ACI course, the first foundation course, I believe it's in the start of the second class of the first formation course, the first ACI course that goes over the three principal paths. Um, in the second class, Geshe Michael starts with presenting Mushi Musum. So I want to say like the first 5 to 10 minutes of the class is just dedicated to Mushi Musum. And mm, I think it says a lot that even in the first course and the second class of the first course, towards the beginning of the 18 series, the 18 course series, that Geshe Michael presents Mushi Musum. Um, and this is also something that they teach the monks at Sarah as well, very early on. So that's kind of why I wanted to share it with you guys as well. Because if we move forward with these courses, these classes, excuse me, um, I think we're going to cover a lot of stuff. And Mushi Musum is kind of like a microscope, right? And you can put different slides underneath it to see what things look like and to find out, what qualities and what characteristics things have. Uh, so I wanted to make sure that everyone uh, understands how we can utilize it as a tool, and we're going to continue. Maybe uh, we'll see. Just whenever we feel like moving on, we'll move on. Um, so I wanted to take um, some more pairs of things. I wanted to take some more groups of things from everyday life to make sure that we're all familiar with how it works still. And then we'll begin to look at things that are a little bit more complex. Um, we'll, we'll look at things like what does it mean to be a non-cow, right? Does everybody understand what I mean by non-cow? Yeah. And what would that mean? What would we be talking about if we were talking about a non-cow? Yeah, we'd be talking about a cow. One says almond milk. Yeah, go, Janet. I heard somebody, I got to share this joke with you. I have to share this joke with you. You may or may not get it depending on how familiar you are with computers. So if I say cheese is equal to um, milk dot zip. Does anybody else get that? Do you see it in the chat? Okay, never mind. Forget I said anything. Forget I said anything about that. If you're a computer nerd, you would get it. So I'm sorry. Um, okay, so let's talk about apples and fruits. Okay. Um, let's go through the possible combinations that we can think of with apples and fruits. Okay. Once again, we're going to start looking at things like non-cow and unchanging things. What does it mean to be a non-cow, right? And would we necessarily be talking about changing things or unchanging things? As a matter of fact, let's start with that one right now to get the juices flowing. We need to turn our cars on and let them warm up. Then we'll go for a drive. Um, some people got it. Andreas got my joke. Maria got my joke. And Ina and Daniel all got my joke. Okay. So if I say non-cow, let's first start with cow. Okay. Right. This could get interesting. Okay. This could get very interesting because what we're in the middle of with my my second book, much more difficult than the first book, than the collected topics that we've been going through with Juan in the mornings. Um, we've been studying hardcore Dharmakirti, right? In the second book, really hardcore. And we're about 5 years into the second book, 4 or 5 years into the second book. I think we're at like 176 pages. So we're 176 pages into a discussion about what does it mean to be a wrong sin and what does it mean to be a cheat sin, right? Wrong sins are like actual objects, and cheat sins are like our mental images, right? How many different types of mental images are there? If we've gone through some of, geez, my hair is horrible this morning. I'm ashamed to be here with you guys right now. Um, how many different types of mental images are there? Can anybody remember from from the 13th ACI course? Yeah, totally. Juan, thank you very much. Um, yes, we have four types of mental images. Okay. So we have to remember that even the category of mental images is something that has members, right? Does everybody understand when I say sets and members of the set? Does everybody understand that? Okay. So if I start saying, we're going to look at what does it mean to be changing thing? What does it mean to be unchanging thing? What does it mean to be an archetype or a mental image? Yeah. We're talking about dun cheese, rick cheese. Yeah. Sok cheese, dra cheese. Yeah. Um, uh, I didn't necessarily want to get into the specifics about what makes mental images. I don't want to get into discussing the different types of cheats ends this morning, but we've all been waiting to step into Chichedrock a little bit more, right? So I want you to think about um, is a cow a cow? Here's the first question. Is a cow a cow? And I'm not talking about from its own side. Let's just assume, okay, because we're in second school, okay, we're just going to assume whether or not a cow is a cow, right? Well, we can say, right? We can say. This is called, once again, this is called and this is universal law, okay? This is one of the first laws of logic, okay? The law of identity. If you wanted something it's in the chat. I'm putting notes in the chat. If you wanted something to look over for the next week, you could look over these basic fundamental laws. Okay. One of them is called the law of identity. Yeah. Another is called the law of the excluded middle. Okay. And we won't go over these, but I want you to have something. If you want to, okay, you can look at these over the course of the next week. Okay. The law of non contradiction. Yeah, I got that. So these are three fundamental laws from which all logical laws are derived. You could say these things, this might be hard word for the interpreters. Um, these are logical axioms. Okay. These are, you could really say all of logic is derived from these laws. You can also say that all of mathematics is derived from these laws. All logic, all mathematics, also all of physics, okay, is derived from these laws. So they're pretty important, right? So when I say the law of identity means that the statement is a cow is correct. Okay. We have to say that. A cow is a cow. Now, if you wanted to talk about is a cow from its own side, that's a whole separate discussion. Okay. However, I wanted to dig into this first question a little bit more because we're going to use this. If you remember what I was saying about Mushi Musum, we're going to look at what does it mean to be a non cow. Okay. But first off, I wanted to have a side discussion. Okay. I promise you, I haven't lost track of where we are. I'm not just rambling. Okay. Trying to set the stage for this first act, this first play. Okay. Um, is a cow a cow? Right. So let's talk about what a cow is. Can everybody give me some characteristics of what a cow is? I'll help you. Right. It's a mammal. Right. Does a cow have four legs? And I don't mean, three-legged cows can exist. I mean, in general, right? In general, cow has four legs. In general, cow has two eyes, right? In general, cows have to be born from a cow mom, right? Yeah. So these are all defining characteristics of what it means to be a cow, right? Now let's go a little bit deeper, okay? Does a cow have color? You see how I started high level, right? So now let's go down a little bit more, right? Does a cow have color? Cow has to have color. If it didn't have color, you wouldn't be able to see it. Does a cow have shape? Yeah, cow has to have shape. It's true. Okay. So when we look at drilling down, we're going to go down. And this is what we're doing in my second book now. Okay. Um, it's going to get very interesting here in a second. I promise you. Um, so we've all decided that cows have characteristics, okay, that make them cow. Okay, so if we go down one level further, okay, um, are the patches of, for some reason in my mind, I have a cow that is white and black. It's like white and then it has these little black spots, right? Because I think this is kind of the traditional archetype of a cow that's given to us. So in my head, I see this black and white cow, right? And I see these pointed ears, these kind of like almost rounded ears, and then almost two horns too sometimes, and a little flapping tail in the back. You know, he's keeping off the flies off of its back. So in my mind, this is what I have. Um, I'm going to ask you something now. Are your mental images two-dimensional or three-dimensional? Two, right? Most people say two, right? Yeah, yeah. Now it's interesting though, right? Because you can have different perspectives. Yeah. I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer. Okay. I think this could be something to bring into your meditation though. Just, we're going to take another second. We're going to take another side trip for a second. When you have mental images, oh, excuse me, when you're doing your meditations in the morning, okay, if you do If you're working with what's called the Kelsang Chingyin, that means the Jorchu, right? Does everybody know the Jorchu from the Lam Rim series? Yeah. So it's a lovely, wonderful, beautiful series of of visualizations. Okay. And we do some very beautiful offerings. Like you create this crystal palace, right? And you're sitting with your teacher and you make them all these wonderful offerings. It's very, very beautiful. It always makes my heart feel, I always feel like, I always walk away from it feeling very, very wonderful. Yeah. Um, so when you think about these mental images, okay, um, are they two-dimensional or three-dimensional? Yeah, thank you for putting that in the chat. Yeah. Okay, now three, right? I mean, I once again, I don't think it's a right answer or a wrong answer. Um, but yeah, totally. And most of the time, I go between the two. I go between two dimension, three dimension. Um, I think if you're sitting with your teacher, sometimes I like to take my mind and like a 3D scanner, and I go behind them and I look at the back of their head and I make the whole back of their shoulder, right? Now, and you can also do this with the refuge tree, right? That big tree that you have on the throne, right? In the Jorchu visualization. I think is wonderful for the for your meditation muscles, right? To play with this, right? To play with going between two dimensions and three dimensions. It can train your mind, and it also, I've found, is a very good way to trick your mind into really into staying on your meditation object. Okay. So the reason I brought that up is because we were talking about two-dimensional or three-dimensional cows, right? Now, in your mind, you can choose to do these meditations on what I'm about to present. Okay. So we were talking about whether or not a cow is a cow. Okay. We all decided it had certain characteristics. We went down to its color and its shape. Okay. So can we break color and shape down any further? Now, this is where it's going to get very interesting. Yes, we can break things down even further, right? Than just colors and shapes. However, can you break things down even further? Can you break color and shape down any further with the eye? Can you break colors and shapes down into anything further that you can still perceive with the consciousness of your eye? I know mentally you can do it, right? Mentally you can break it down. However, when you break it down with your mind, are there components of color and shape that you can still see with the eye? Juan says yes. Okay. Now, this might get a little tricky on. Um, Colors and shapes are the only thing that we can see with the eye. Okay. If we break it down any further, what in the second school, can anybody give me what the definition of ultimate reality is? Hmm. Okay, the definition of ultimate reality, it's a loose definition. Janet, close, close. Yeah. Okay. Now these are all close. So Lon has it right here. Okay. Lon has it right. All right. So if ultimate reality is what you can't reduce any further. Okay. You can't reduce it anymore, even with the mind. Okay. Now, remember, this is the second school. Okay. And they say that that ultimate reality consists of partless particles, or indivisible atoms, and uh, indivisible moments of awareness. Okay. Now, you have to understand why I'm going here when we're talking about whether or not a cow is a cow. Okay. Can we all agree that can we all agree that cows consist of, can we all agree that cows are made of partless particles? Okay. So at what point does a partless particle turn into two partless particles? Yes, Andreas. And if we take one partless atom and we put it together with another partless atom, what has happened? Are we starting to group things? We're starting to group things together with our mind, right? Because if you took two partless atoms, you can't put them together because then they would not be partless, right? They would consist of two things. Now, at any point that the mind ties two things together, it's necessarily a mental image, or at least it becomes something conceptual. Okay. So I'm going to ask you again, is is the color and shape that you see that makes up a cow, is that a cow? Yeah, it's the mental image of a cow, right? Because what's happening is you're taking the colors and the shapes of that cow and you're using your mind to give it a label, right? Yeah. Okay. So you can think about the same thing with a car, right? So the reason I'm saying this is at what point, well, thank you for coming back, Janet. You turned your camera off. I was worried you left.
I'm at work and my client just walked up to me in her bra. And so I didn't
Yeah,
want her to be on I mean, nor I don't care if she's on the camera, but she just gotta have clothes on.
I get it. No, I get it. I get it. Yeah, that's an interesting way to start the morning, Janet. Yeah. So point, oh man. Um, okay, so we were talking about whether or not the eye, right, sees, quote, cow. Okay, so I'm asking you, I'm telling you right now that every time you use a word to describe something, that might not be the actual thing that you're talking about. Okay, because most of the time, when you talk about like computer in front of you, right, the computer in front of you, okay, is it a computer or is it a group of partless particles, partless atoms? From this school, Janet, you had a very, very good comment, right? In which you said the inherent empty nature of all things, right? And I think that's true. But for the second school, we're going to talk about partless particles and their understanding of ultimate reality. Okay. So it's everybody know the word paradox. I'm pretty sure you do, right? Okay. So a cow can't be two things at the same time. From the same from the perspective of the same of a single person. Okay? We're not talking about whether or not a cow can be a cow for me and a giant for an ant. Okay, we're talking about from one person, from the perspective of one person. Um, so if I tell you that a cow is a group of partless atoms, but it's also a cow, okay? This is the, it's very classical. I'm gonna put it, this is something else you can look into uh, if you wanted to. Let's see if I can bring this back. Okay, I'll put this in the chat. This is something you can study, okay, if you wanted to. You don't have to. Where is it? Not giving me there we go. Okay. It's a study in classical philosophy called Mariology. It's a study of parts and wholes, okay? And this is something that modern philosophy uses to analyze the nature of things, but they got it from the classical Indian schools, okay? 2,000, 3,000 years ago, okay? So it's a very, very beautiful thing to spend a few days on to just look at. So why did I put that in the chat? Because we're looking at the parts and the wholes of a cow. Okay. Whether or not there is a cow that exists as a single thing, right? Because this is what we think of when you think about a cow. You look at the computer and you think you're looking at a computer, but really you're looking at a bunch of parts, right? That you're gluing together, tying together. Okay. So does everybody understand why it might not be such a simple and straightforward question if I ask you, is a cow a cow? Okay. So, what were we looking at first? We were trying to see how mushi musum could be used to look at these things. So, what's the difference between what, let me put this in, what's the difference between a cow and a non-cow? What's the difference between a cow and a non-cow? Okay. Okay. Sorry. What's what's the difference? Uh, I messed up here. Everybody should be able to answer that last one really easily. What's the difference between a cow and a non non-cow? Okay. We all know the difference between a cow and a non-cow. So non-cow is everything that isn't a cow. Yeah. Could we say, yeah, first one is the opposite, right? It's mutually exclusive. You have to say that. Okay, so if I ask you this, is a cow, hold on, is non-cow, let me ask this a different way, sorry. Does non-cow include non-existent things? I think we could say yes. Yeah, I think we could say yes here. I'm always a little, when I start thinking about non-existence, I always have to slow down a little bit. Um, so, um, okay, we have the question here is a cow a cow? So we wanted to look at, once again, does non-cow, uh, oh, go back. Okay. So what's the difference between a cow and a non-cow? Andreas says that the first, whether or not cow is non-cow, They have to be mutually exclusive. Something can't be a cow and a non-cow. It's true, right? If we're looking at this question through Mushi Musum, then we're left with yes, one thing has to be a cow can't also be a non-cow. But this is where it gets tricky, okay? And I'm not entirely sure of the question. Excuse me. Jeez, I need to wake up. I'm not entirely sure of the answer, okay? But we're going to see if we can find it together, okay? So if I say, what's the difference between a cow and a non-cow? Second is mutually inclusive from the perspective of partless particles, but there is a difference between, or from a mental image perspective. That's where I'm going, Andreas. Yes. Because if something is a non-cow, that's how we form the mental image of a cow. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that non-cow is the cow that you see in front of you from the perspective of the second school. Does everybody understand why that may be? Okay. We've talked about how mental images are formed, right? And how we identify cows. Okay. Because you see something in front of you, that is a mammal. It has big floppy ears, right? It has a nose, a long fat body, four legs, right? And you see this thing and you say, "Oh, this is a cow. This is a cow." But the cow isn't a cow. The cow is a bunch of colors and shapes, right? That you label, right? Okay. So this is why now talking about what we just talked about, okay? Can we go through the mushi musum of cow and non-cow? Somebody give me the first one. Let's say give me something that is both a cow and a non-cow. Hold on. First, let's talk about the difference between cow and non-cow. Sorry. I don't think we've stayed there long enough, okay? If something is a non-cow, okay, it's the opposite of everything which is a cow. Okay. If something is a non-cow, it's the opposite of everything which is not a cow. And when we take that second flip, when we flip that pancake twice, okay, it becomes a mental image. Okay. I think this could get really interesting because everybody has heard Geshe Michael talk about, okay, we talking about Chi right now. Okay. Right. So Geshe Michael has always said, well, at least I've heard him say this over the past 5 years. Um, the image of a, excuse me, the things that you see with your eye, right, that you call a cow, okay, and the mental image of a cow, he says the same thing, okay? He says the same thing, okay? And this is one of the meditations that if you do this, this is the difference between quote cow, quote cow, right? A cow or the cow, this cow, right? And cowness, okay? So that's what I'm trying to really focus on here and how we can use Mushi Musum to look at things very deeply, okay? It's a tool, it's a microscope, okay, that we're going to look at these different questions with, okay? So that's from the perspective of the highest middle way, okay? Because our labels, right? And our reality consists of what you say is tokpe tok tsam, are merely just labels. Okay. And even emptiness is empty, right? Okay. Everything has a label attached to it. And when you look from the perspective of highest middle way, okay, the mental image and the thing that we call a cow are actually the same thing because of what we have talked about up until now. Okay. Does everybody understand how we've gotten there? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Adam.
Yes.
Can you
Go
just
ahead. Let me.
repeat the last part, please? Are we talking from the perspective of the highest school or from the second school?
Yeah. Well, I kind of wanted to. I gave away the punchline. I, sh- I I told you the punchline before I told you the joke, which is a very horrible way to be a comedian. Um, but uh, yeah, so from the perspective of highest middle way, okay, we would have to say that the mental image of the thing, right? Yeah, the mental image of the thing and the thing that we are talking about are same thing. Okay. From the perspective of second school, it gets a little bit more tricky. Okay. A little bit more tricky. Okay. So now I'm going to ask you, give me an example of something not from the highest, from the perspective of highest middle way. Okay. We're going to look at from perspective of second school. Okay. Can you give me an example of something which is both? Okay. Here, I'll put it in the chat. Give me an example of, here, I'll just put it this way. Give me example both something which is a cow and also a non uh, non cow. Hmm. Interesting. This is interesting, Janet. I think this is a good question here. I'd love to hear somebody else's opinion about this. Yeah, the mental image of a cow, right? Yeah, I mean, I think these are okay. No, I asked you guys both, right? Give me an example of something which is both. That's probably the hardest one to do with this question, okay? Because this takes a little careful thought. Remember, I was talking about the study of parts and wholes, okay? Something called Chiktudrel, okay? It's a classical way of looking at something and using hmm, it's called reasoning, a type of reasoning, right? So Chiktudrel, you may have heard the term before. It's a classical term that's used to analyze whether or not something is a part or a bunch of parts or whether or not it is a whole thing. Okay. And oh, yeah, chick to drill. What is it? Chick to drill. Chick to drill. Right. Um, this first one's pretty hard to look at. Okay. This first one's pretty hard to think about. Now let's go and we'll come back to this one. Okay. Once we look at the other two. Okay. Give me an example of something which is only a cow. Yeah, a running cow. Are there different types of like some cows are kept for milk? I I think it would be fun to have a pet cow. Yeah. Yeah, a cow standing in the meadow eating grass, right? And notice how, yeah, Andreas used the word the, right? Here. So the cow, a specific cow, a death cow. Somebody put death cow. Shijen, I just saw that. Uh, I picture like a cow that's like Godzilla, um, running over a village. The archetype of a cow. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I think, look, I'm not trying to confuse you, okay? But there are things that yeah, I think I might have chose something too complicated. It's hard to keep all these moving parts together. So I would say, right, something from the perspective of second school, there isn't something that is both a cow and a non-cow. Which is interesting, right? Because non-cow should be the thing that we're talking about. But I use the word talking about. Okay. That means that we are applying a term, a label, a name. And the second you apply a term, or a name or label, okay, it's a mental image. Can we all agree that terms and words, labels, are mental images? Can we all agree there? Yeah. So if I say that something is a non-cow, that means we're using a term or a label to identify a group of changing things, right? The colors and the shapes are changing things. The term or the label non-cow is an unchanging thing. Okay. So I would say, right? This is why I was saying that I'm not entirely sure of the answer, because in the second book, from the perspective of J and really hardcore Dharmakirti, okay, um, we've been talking about this for about a year now. Okay, we've spent about a year talking about this question that comes up. Okay, and what I've learned so far, and this is the big punchline right here. Okay, there's a difference between, and this is going to get a little hard for you guys. Okay, right? This is the difference between perceiving, okay, and identifying, okay? Perceiving and ascertaining, okay? Sorry, translators, for using the word ascertaining. That's why I tried to use the word identity first, okay? um, J just said in the last class that I had with Geshe Michael, the mixed nuts class, J said, you see blue with your eye. When you see a patch of blue, okay, you see blue, right? Even though the blue has to be made of individual little blue particles, right? You can't see a single atom of blue, can you, with your eye? You cannot, okay? You cannot, okay? However, you do see patch of blue, okay? But this is where I'm trying to take you guys, okay? If you see a patch of quote, excuse me, if you see a patch of blue, okay, are you seeing blue or are you seeing the individual atoms? Are you seeing the parts or are you seeing the whole? Does everybody understand that question? Okay. When you see blue, you have to be seeing a patch of blue. Okay. That's like saying, yeah, I mean, Shijun has got a very interesting point here. You're seeing the parts, right? So when you see computer, are you seeing parts of the computer or are you seeing the computer? Okay. But take it down. Take it down. Okay. If you're seeing patch of blue, right? Is anytime you see the color blue, you have to be seeing a patch of blue because you can't see an individual blue particle with your eye. That's like saying you could see an atom with your eye, right? Does anybody have that miraculous, supernormal meditation ability? Does anybody in the chat? I bet you all do. I bet you all are great, accomplished meditators, and you can see a single atom with your eye. uh, okay. If you could see a single atom with your eye, I would venture to say you are very close to seeing emptiness directly. Um, okay, so now we go back to the question. Okay, we're looking for something that is both, right? A cow and a non-cow. Okay, so when you see a patch of blue, K-Drip J has just said that you see a patch of blue. Okay. You see the patch of blue with your eye. Yes. Okay. He says yes. Okay. But, okay, hold on. First off, does everybody understand why that question may not be so straightforward? Right? Because I tell you, I say, you can't see a single atom of blue with your eye. Okay. But ultimate reality in this school is comprised of partless particles, partless atoms. Okay. So, um, Kajip J has said, you see blue with your eye. You see the patch of blue with your eye. But the difference here is that you don't recognize it as being blue with your eye. Okay. Does everybody understand that? In order to recognize something as being blue, right? It takes a little, it's called ascertaining or to identify it as blue. Okay. Now there's a distinction. Do you understand why I make the distinction? Okay. Yes, you see the blue with your eye. Okay. However, you don't recognize it as being blue with your eye. Okay. Now, knowing that, can we go back to the first question? The first move within Mushi Musun, something which is both a cow and a non-cow. Let's go back to this. Okay, something which is both a cow and a non-cow. Is there something we can say that is both a cow and a non-cow? I think here we would have to say there isn't something. Okay. That is both from the perspective of second school. Okay. Now we've all heard that non-cow means a cow. Excuse me, non-cow means quote cow. It doesn't mean a cow. or the cow, a specific cow. Okay. Does everybody understand the distinction that we just spent 5 to 10 minutes talking about? Okay. That's why I think we have to say there is nothing which is both cow and also non-cow. Okay. So let's move on. What does that mean? Okay. If we already know that there's something which isn't both, what does that mean this pair is in Mushi Musum? Is it three or four? Yeah, assume, right? It's three. Yeah, has to be. Okay. Because we just decided it's not both things. Okay. So I want somebody to give me an example of something which is only a cow. Well, we already did that. Okay. The cow standing in the field in front of me. Okay. If I'm in a field and I'm looking at a cow, I mean that specific cow. So we would say, um, a cow, here, just a cow, any specific cow. Okay. Now, somebody give me an example of something which is only a non cow. Oop, geez, I'm having a hard time typing. Okay. Something which is only a non cow. Yeah, the mental image of a cow in my mind, right? Or let's say the mental image of the specific cow that we were just talking about, right? Okay. Now, somebody give me an example of something which is neither. Neither a cow. Yeah, thinking one. Or a non-cow would be a computer. Okay. Or the sky or an elephant, right? Okay. So do you see how we can use these things, right? We can use mushi musum to really start to analyze things, right? Do you understand how that was the first thing that we were talking about was something that is both a cow and a non-cow? And do you see how we had to go through the side debate? We had to have a side debate, didn't we, in order to figure that first one out? Did everybody learn something as we went down that first side debate? I hope everyone learned something, or at least got some things to think about. Okay. All right. So now I think we can understand why Mushi Musum may be powerful. Okay. So Andreas has his hand raised.
Thanks, Adam. I just wanted to ask, don't know if I quite got why you brought in the discussion about the patch of blue
Oh,
versus an atom of blue.
yeah, yeah. Because we were trying to figure out whether non-cow referred to a specific cow. Excuse me. The reason I brought that up is tied up in the way that I just misspoke as I was asking you the question. It is true that a non-cow refers to a cow. Okay? A non-cow refers to a specific cow. Okay? Just in the same way that non-blue refers to a specific patch of blue. The difference between the two, and the reason I brought up the patch of blue, is because the patch of blue also has to be made up of individual atoms, okay? Indivisible particles, okay? But it's impossible to see individual particles of blue with the eye, okay? So I was trying to make the distinction between things that you can see with the eye, but you don't recognize them as being that way. This is why I use the term, the difference between seeing blue versus, let me put this in the chat, versus um, recognizing uh, blue. Okay. And when you see cow, excuse me, let me put this, seeing cow versus recognizing cow. Okay. So seeing cow would be an example of um, a specific cow, right? However, recognizing cow would be an example, non non cow. Plus, I was also trying to confuse you on purpose, Andreas. uh, okay. Um, Now, does everybody understand why when I say, I'm going to put it this way, non-cow refers to, here, I'm going to put this in, I have a pet fly in my house. He's a pet. I named him Steve last night. And he's trying to help me he's my assistant this morning. So non-cow refers to, excuse me, refers to um, a specific cow. Okay. Does everybody understand why I put refers here in capital letters? Because I was trying to yell the term refers. Everybody knows how when you put something in capital letters, it's supposed to be like you're yelling. So non-cow refers to a specific cow. Um, okay, because and I would say in all schools, mm, non non-cow uh, would refer to a specific cow because it includes naming naming a specific oh my goodness, I'm not typing well this morning. A specific cow, a cow. Okay, Andreas has his hand raised again. Andreas, you're trying to stump me this morning.
No, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Earlier you said that a non-cow is talking about cow.
Yeah.
Sorry, talking about cow in inverted commas.
Oh,
The
uh,
label, not a cow or the cow, not a cow or the cow.
yeah,
Now you're
you
saying
can.
it refers to a specific cow, so that
Yeah,
confuses me.
yeah. No, it's no problem. This is interesting. And Andreas, you can't always trust what I say. I'm joking. Joking. Um, as much as I can, I try to tell you when I'm unsure about something. Okay. I will never purposefully say anything that is incorrect. And sometimes I may misspeak. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. So when I did say that non-cow, um, non-cow does refer to the name or the label that you are giving something. Okay, it does. That's what I mean. Oh, I could say it this way. How about this? Oh, non. I could also write it this way. Non-cow um, is equal to um, your label, uh, the name, quote cow, right? Quote cow
Yeah.
would be the
Yes.
name that you give something, right? So non-cow is equal to the cow. The name quote cow, okay, that you apply to things. I sometimes think about a post-it note, okay? Like I think about I think about a specific car, your specific computer, right? But then you have a post-it note that you put onto the computer, and then on the post-it note is written the word cow. Okay. Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
now does everybody understand why I made the distinction between non cow versus uh a specific. Yeah, non cow is cowness. That's right. Yeah, a specific cow. Okay. This is the question that we were first looking at in our Mushi Musum. Okay. We were looking for something that is both non cow and also a specific cow. Are you trying to tell us the mind only school on upstates states the mind only school up? Oh, yeah, totally. States everything is a non cow. Yeah, I think that's one way we could say this. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that might be a good distinction to make, Janet. Yeah. Um, and that's interesting that you put it that way. And I think that's a very beautiful way of stating it. Yeah. Okay. So when how many people, when they came into this class today, thought that non-cow, right? The opposite of everything which is not a cow was the cow. How many people, when you came into this class today, thought that? Yeah, totally. No, at least Nguyen is brave enough to admit it. Okay. Um, no, but you understand why we make the distinction now, right? Everybody was asking for Chi Chedrock. This is Chi Chedrock. Okay. Yeah. Now, is there a difference between quote cow uh, versus uh, cowness? Ooh, Nguyen says same. Okay, what are the four types of cheese? I mean, I don't mean cheddar and Parmesan. What are four types of cheese? Sok chi. Yeah, sok chi. It's like the group of parts that we label chi, or excuse me, the parts. We could get really confusing here. You know what I mean? Are there four types of cheese that refer to four types of cheese? I mean, cheese that you can eat. Sorry. Okay. I had to, uh, okay. Let's get serious here. Right. Yeah, here are the four types of cheese, right? Tsokchi, Dunchi, Rikchi, and Trachi. Okay. Now, could we say, right, if there are four types of cheese, that not every chi is going to be the same as every other chi? If we say there are four types of mental images, okay, then that means that there are some mental images which are different from other mental images. So if we were going to put quote cow, which one of these types of mental images, tsokchi, jachi, dunchi, rikchi, if we were going to put quote cow, right? Maybe quote cow is what we see in front of us by our eyes. Cowness is what we give a label, right? Yeah. I think we can start to think of things this way, right, Arena? Yeah. So Nguyen says rikchi, right? Which would be quote cow, okay? And dunchi, right? The meaning, right, of what it means to be cowness, okay? Everybody understand how we're getting into Chi here? And how did we get into, right? What could be dynamite for us seeing emptiness directly, okay? With using the most simple tool that you're given at the monastery. Okay. The first tool of reasoning is mushi musum. Everybody understand how we just dove really deep. Okay. All right. Now, with that being said, we have 2 more minutes to field questions. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tie all this together. I want you to think about it. Okay. Hey, Andreas. Hi, sir.
Sorry, I've been
No.
meditating on cow, uh, quote cow, a cow, the cow,
Yeah.
and it what we've been discussing now and how you're saying Rikchi, Junshi, Drashi, and Tokchi.
Yeah.
It seems to me that, I mean, even the answer to that is empty. For me,
Yeah.
cow, quote cow is a label. Cow is cowness,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cow is more of a specific thing, and decow is very specific. But
Yeah. Um,
am I wrong in saying that it's right to have different answers, or it
um,
doesn't really matter if your answer is the same as somebody else?
um, Let me ask you a question. Okay. And maybe we could identify whether or not we can have different answers and that be okay. All right. Geshe
Okay.
Michael says that one of these four types of mental images is not a real mental image. Okay. Geshe Michael says one of these four types of cheese is not, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Geshe Michael says one of these four types of mental images, right, is actually not a true mental image. He says one of these four types of cheese is not an actual chi. Tokchi, tokchi. Yeah, yeah. Okay. We can all agree on that, right? That's what Geshe Michael said. Okay. What I'm trying to point out to is that we have to have some sort of consensus. And I would say that there has to be a right. Now, if that being said, none of these things would be true. Nothing I've said all day would be true for somebody who had no training. Okay. You all have training. Okay. Everybody here, where I live, well, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know. But if they are how they appear to me, okay, um, everybody would say I'm full of shit. Okay. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have to have some consensus here. And I would say um, we're still finding this out. And I would say that if we had an answer to this, and if we all knew it correctly, okay, if we all perfectly understood this, we would have seen emptiness already. Okay. Understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's okay to not know this answer. Okay. And I think it's also okay to understand it correctly, but it's a different thing to use very strong single pointed meditation to understand these things in a deep state of meditation. Okay. So even when we do have the right answer, okay, it does not mean that we have seen it directly. Okay. Which is the difference between understanding emptiness intellectually and perceiving emptiness directly. Okay. Everybody understand why I said, because everyone says we see emptiness directly. Okay. Do you see it with your eyes? No.
No.
Your senses are withdrawn, right? And your mind is actually in the first level of the form realm, okay, where you're not using your eyes, right? So you experience emptiness directly. All right. I mean, I hope I didn't just not answer your I hope I just not answered your question, Andreas. Yeah. Um, okay. It is 8:33. Andreas, was that too much of a cliffhanger? I'm happy to talk about it with you more. Um, and maybe we could shelve that until next week. I just want to make sure we don't keep the translators too long. I think you understood what I was saying.
No, I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so we do. Janet has a quick question. Uh,
No, Nagon's question,
yeah.
Riggs and
Oh.
Dawn, is Riggs the class or type of the object, and then the Dawn
Oh.
is the
I didn't. I
function
did
of the object?
totally. I didn't see the two there. Yeah. So Rikchi, okay. There's something called a thought referent. Okay. Means that what your thought is referring to. Okay. There's also something like when you think about the definition of something. Okay. This is interesting here because the word dun, okay, is the object. Dun can mean object. Okay. And everybody's heard the term rangzhen. Okay. We'd say actual object when we translate it. Okay. So rangzhen, we say, is the actual object. However, the literal meaning, okay, here, I'll put this too, something we call the dradun, right? Um, dradun, it means the literal meaning of what we're saying, okay? And there's two different ways you can look at this term, dradun, okay? So you see how the word dun, right, is both in dun chi and dradun, okay? You also see up here how there's something called a dra chi, right? Okay. So when I say dun, I mean the actual object. Okay. And we have something called the rang zen. Okay. And or we sorry, I should write it this way. Rang zen. Okay. Rang here means a self. Okay. And sen here means the sen means a sign. Okay. Or like an example almost. Okay. Like a sign of something. Okay. So we're talking about when I say Rang Tsen, we're talking about the sign that something has a self. Okay. When we say a Rang Tsen and a Chi Tsen, okay, Rang Tsen would be the actual example of something in our world, okay, that has a self nature. We're talking from perspective of second school. Okay. Everybody your alarm bell should have been going off, right? When I say the example of something that has a self. Okay. Highest middle way, right? We say the example of something that has no self nature. Okay. Right. So the question here is what's the difference between a rikchi and a dunchi? Okay. So the rikchi, right? I would say, okay, for my first four here, um, the rikchi, okay, would be our mental image of cowness, okay, and the dunchi here would be um, the example of the thing in our world. Okay. If we say that Sokchi, right, is not a real chi, okay, we're only left with three chis. Okay. And there has to be a difference between the actual what our mental image of quote cow is referring to. Okay. And I'm suggesting to you that there is a difference between quote cow and cowness. Okay. So what we're trying to figure out here is kind of what I think Irina has touched upon. Okay. I would say that quote cow is an example of um, our dunchi. Okay. Can anybody tell me what the difference between dunchi and rikchi is to maybe understand why it is that I say that? We've gone over by 10 minutes. Translators, is it okay? Okay. I want somebody to tell me what the difference between a rikchi and a dunchi is. Like the rikchi of my hair this morning and the dunchi of my hair. I think Irina has it here. I think Irina has it. Okay. You guys, if you guys want to, um, I'll dig into this a little further, right? And I won't just tell you what Geshe Michael has said. I'll dig into this a little further. And next week, what we come back and maybe we prove this, okay? Rather than just going off what somebody has told us, okay? So I come back and I have a slideshow for you and we go through how we can prove this, okay? Does that make sense? Is that okay? All right, I'm getting thumbs up. All right. Um, Andreas, Juan, Arena, these are all very, very good questions, and getting to the bottom of them should take us very far in our understanding of Chichedra. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what this, Andreas, this is what I'm suggesting. This is what I'm suggesting to you. Okay? This is what I'm suggesting. Okay. Because, and I'm going to tell you why I say that. Okay. Before we go, last thing. The reason I say that is because even our labels have to be referring to something. Okay. So there is an element of a mental image when we identify something as a cow that we are also referring to within our mind. Okay. Do you understand why I would say that? Yeah. Okay. Even the term or label cow in your mind has to refer to something in your mind. Okay? And if that doesn't make sense, I ask you, please, please think about it. Okay. Please think about it. That's very, very wonderful, beautiful meditation you can do as you walk around. Okay. And as you work with your clients, Janet. Maybe not while you're in the middle of a meeting with your clients, but as you're sitting and waiting in your room and as you're eating dinner, maybe, or going for a walk in the park, it's very, very beautiful to think about why I may say that even the word cow, right, has to be referring to something. And I'm going to give you something to really think about, okay? The letter C is dependent upon the word, the uh, the letter C is dependent upon the letter O, which is dependent upon the letter W. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. You cannot get the term cow, okay, without the individual letters. Okay. Understand? Okay. And so that the whole word cow, right, is dependent upon smaller things, right? Which means that the mental image cow has to also refer to the individual letters of the word cow. Okay. All right. Did I properly confuse everyone this morning? Okay. Um, okay, that's how I know I did good job. Okay. Really, really appreciate you guys. It was fun. Sorry we didn't have more question answer time. Uh, I I talked too long. Um, and at some point we'll have a proper question and answer period, okay, where we can further dive into the questions that Juan and Andreas brought to us, okay? Because I think it would be really fun to have a whole class where we could just talk about these things. All right. Okay. Very much so appreciate everyone. Thank you all for coming. Geshe Michael in class 11 asked us to please work on this. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right. Well, once again, I love you guys. Very happy you're in my life. And thank you all for being wonderful angels that allow me to get the good virtue of sharing these things. You're very much so. I'm dependent upon you to see emptiness, to experience emptiness directly. Okay. Hope everybody has a good rest of your day or a good sleep tonight. Okay. Wonderful, guys. All right. We'll see you next week. Okay. Bye.